there's no way someone would know, like, I can know all the things I would be as an exceptional doctor just because I went through medical school. No, you know, but that from different experiences.
I do have a sense of what the job entails, right?
You have a sense of, you're saying you would have a sense of everything a job would entail before you would get in it?
Not everything, but that's a maximalist framing that kind of undermines the point.
But that's my point, though. Like, I'm saying to your question, like, none of us would know every single thing that we can do without being in there.
Well, not every single thing, but for example, have you spoken to other electeds about the challenges?
The core of it, if we're saying, well, they're not doing the job and legislation doesn't matter and legislators don't matter, I don't understand how that correlates for that role. Like, at the end of the day...
it's not that they don't matter. It's not that they don't matter, but it's that enough of them are corrupted that they don't take votes that are reflective of what their constituents actually want, which is why we have a country where so many policies are popular.
But then you vote them out.
Right.
I mean, but saying that is the dynamic.
But that was my question. Why don't we support a challenge to Hakeem Jeffries then?
But there's a...
All right, I'm so glad to be joined today by Michael Blake. You know him as the candidate running against Ritchie Torres in New York's 15th district. We spoke earlier in the year, or maybe it was last year, to another candidate, Delorney, who has since dropped out of the race. I want to hear all the updates that we've missed in the intervening time. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be with you and appreciate everything you've been doing. You've been creating space for so many people, so it's a blessing.
Well, I feel the same way. We've been playing email tag for a while, so I have a lot of questions. I'm very, very eager to hear from you. Let's start off top with, I think, the question that is front of mind for a lot of viewers. The reason why so many people are excited to see Ritchie Torres have a challenger is because he is known as perhaps the most vocally pro-Israel candidate in Congress. He has made it very much a central part of his identity, despite the fact that he represents what I understand to be one of the poorest, if not the poorest district in the United States, at least with respect to certain statistics around child poverty. And the disconnect between what his ostensible political focus has been and what the needs of his community are glaring and gross. That being said, people want some clarity as to your own history, relationship with the state of Israel, if in fact they want to throw their support behind you as someone who's going to get someone who is so committed to Israel, who is, of course, in the midst of enacting a genocide in Palestine. If the purpose is to get Ritchie Torres out, we want him to be replaced with someone who is very different politically. So talk to me about your own relationship with Israel, including some prior support from AIPAC and for AIPAC.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, the reason why we have more endorsements in the race than Ritchie Torres does is because people are ready for something transformative and very different here in the Bronx. And that's everything from New York Progressive Action, Progressive Victory, Citizens Against AIPAC, Unite Here, just to name a few. And first and foremost, it's about being very direct and clear of what are people looking for? They're looking for how do we raise wages and reduce costs and actually address affordability, and also making sure that we have a representative that we are proud of and not ashamed of. And that's what's happening with Ritchie Torres. Direct to your question, I've been very clear on this. I have traveled to Israel and the Middle East twice, once on an AIPAC trip, once on a JCRC trip. And what I saw then and what I saw thereafter is the reason why I have walked away. Everything from conversation about apartheid and the meeting being stopped immediately, to speaking at an event where I was talking about Black-Jewish relations. And a lot of people don't realize that I am an ordained reverend, where I was able to give the Sermon on the Mount from there, baptize people from the Jordan River, which is the primary reason why I went out to Israel. But then you come back and then they put Barack Obama's visual on the screen, they start booing Obama. We know a genocide is happening. There is no question about that. We know that we have an Israeli government that is consistently focusing on destroying and lying about details, as we saw with the World Central Kitchen workers, one of which was our friend who helped us during COVID. We know that we are spending money on bombs and we're spending it on books. And so what I've been saying to people very consistently is that you have a choice here. You have a choice in someone in me, Michael Blake, who is willing to say, I have learned, we are better, and we are clearly better than the alternative in Ritchie Torres, and there is no question on where we stand on the policies. Or you have someone in Ritchie Torres who has made it very clear that his priority is supporting Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government as opposed to what's happening here in the Bronx.
So what do you say to folks who look at your record of running for a lot of different positions in New York. I think most recently you ran for mayor in the last round with Zohran Mamdani, and who make this argument that, Michael Blake, he just wants to be in office, and therefore there's this implication that there's something opportunistic, and that we live at a time where obviously the polls have swung wildly against Israel and pro-Palestine over the last 2 years or so. And it's a real political hot potato for Democrats who are trying to figure out how to win in midterms and how to regain the presidency, while frankly also being substantively committed to continuing to support Israel as an ally. And so what we're seeing at the moment seems to be a lot of Democrats who are sort of recalibrating, trying to figure out how to fit in, how to figure out how to disclaim AIPAC dollars, or how to say they no longer support funding the Iron Dome without there being a cataclysmic and substantive shift away from status quo policy. And in that environment, I look to someone like you and say, okay, but how do we believe this is a sincerely and long-held commitment as opposed to a choice to run in a lane that seems wide open and very popular right now politically?
Yeah, because I walked away from those decisions and policies going back to 2020 after that primary itself. So this is not something that is 6 minutes or 6 weeks. We're talking about 6 years. And I've been very transparent about that. And I do think that it is important that we have real conversation. Every single one of us has issue or issues that when we learn about in our lifetime, we make changes and we should get better from that. That is what I am saying. I've been very acknowledging of that the propaganda that was fed and given to me from AIPAC is something that is wrong, and that's why I've walked away, full stop. To the broader piece, when someone says, well, you've run for office, and why are you running again? Because I want to help people. And I say that, we've had 7 wins. We've had multiple primary elections. We have general elections, and we had a DNC election that we won in that manner. At the end of the day, it is like all of us, you are pursuing what you are called to do and want to do in terms of helping people. And so whether it be politics, whether it be medicine, whether it be the car mechanic, whether it be the individual that is the food vendor on the street, you're going to have opportunities where you may not be successful. That doesn't mean you don't keep going. And real talk, when we think about here in New York in particular, there are many exceptional public servants who have lost and decided to run again to go help the people. Jumaane Williams, Tish James, so many others. And so a loss does not define your calling. So to the moment where we're at, the right thing to do is to say, where do you stand on these issues? And you have someone in me who is saying it is not only time to walk away, but be very clear that in a district that has historically been the poorest district in the country, we should be funding our kids. We should be helping our communities. We should be helping people actually reduce the costs. You have someone in me who actually helped Zohran Mamdani get elected. You have someone in Ritchie Torres who repeatedly did everything to try to stop that. There is a choice in terms of who you want to have in office. And if you are ready to see someone who actually you can be proud of and not someone in Ritchie Torres who's making decisions just for one community, then it's for our opportunity to make sure I get elected to Congress.
What has your experience been vis-a-vis the Democratic Party as you've run against Ritchie Torres? Here's why I ask. Historically, frankly, especially since the 2018 cycle in which AOC had her unexpected victory right next door to your district, the Democratic Party really has closed ranks around incumbents. And I remember working at The Intercept back in the 2018, 2019 era and editing and reading articles about the DNC blacklisting vendors that would work with any challenger to a Democratic Party incumbent. And this line that went out that said, well, we're just going to protect incumbents, that was very inconsistently policed when you saw that a progressive was the incumbent. For example, what happened in Buffalo with India Walton when she won her primary and didn't get the support of the Democratic Party, and of course with Zohran Mamdani as well. It does seem like the Democratic Party itself is very hostile to progressives, to people who are anti-Zionist or critical of Israel. What has your experience been as you have been challenging Ritchie Torres?
I've had a lot of people who I thought were friends who walked away from me, who don't like that I'm speaking what is right in my spirit. You got a lot of people who have been longtime supporters who have not supported us, fundamentally around the framing of trying to conflate being against the Israeli government and Zionism does not make someone anti a people, whether it be same thing here. When I criticize, whether it be President Trump or President Obama, a Democrat or a Republican, I would not call someone anti-American. And so we've been in that zone where you have people who have been taking those lanes. Take it in a step further. You know, there's look, you understand the dynamics a lot of times in which people are trying to protect those in institution because they don't want to have a scenario that if they are challenged, that someone will come after them. But I do think it speaks volumes that in this race currently, you have already now 3 unions who have endorsed me, because I think people are getting sick and tired of being told what to do, right? You have a dynamic, not just as it relates to what's going on in the Middle East. Let's talk about on immigration. You have someone in Ritchie Torres who has 4 times voted in support of deporting people. He voted for the Lake and Riley Act, which was Trump's first bill when he came back into office. He voted for the $10 billion in terms of expressing gratitude for ICE and additional ICE funding and Border Patrol funding. So to your question, it's not just people saying, you know what, I'm going to do what is easy. The easy thing would be, let me just rock with the incumbent because I think that's the right thing to do. What they're doing is what's right. And so look, you lose people along the way when you're fighting for justice, right? You don't do this because you're just trying to do the easy thing. And if we can't watch what's happening throughout the Middle East, not just obviously what we've seen and what's going on in Israel, Gaza, and Palestine, but how the hell do you see what's going on as it relates to this senseless war that's happening with Iran, where your gas prices are going up because of a war we have no business being in, and just be like, you know what, I'm good, right? And so, you know, I say, like, look, if you want to be on the right side, come help us, you know, and not let someone like Ritchie Torres, who literally is profiting off of the war because he actually made investments in the weapons makers. Or you can have someone who's actually trying to make sure we invest in our people, and that be me.
So this is kind of why I'm asking. A lot of my audience, we've been on a journey, right? We've been on a journey over the last 5 years of this podcast, where when we started, it was right before the 2024 election. Then Biden wins, and he has a trifecta, narrow as it might have been. And there were a lot of promises made about why those of us who came out of the Bernie movement, who really did feel like the moment in history demanded more substantive change around healthcare with the pandemic and all of these things, why we should have some faith that the Biden administration would meet the moment. And so we were told for years, here's a plan. There's going to be a Build Back Better bill. Oh, don't worry if it gets bifurcated. They're still going to push the human, what do they call it? There was the infrastructure side, and there was like the human interest side. It's not human interest, but you know what I mean, the social services side of the bill through.
I got you.
Yeah. And none of that happened. And the student debt cancellation didn't happen as promised. And even policies that were so formative in the beginning of 2020, like the interest around George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, never happened. It felt like something was fundamentally broken. And our project on this podcast has been trying to figure out systemically why that is. And I think Gaza was a real tipping point for people even more, outside of my more narrow left community, when they had a realization that they didn't think that the Democratic Party was working in their best interest, nor was it working in their own best interest, because they were seemingly willing to throw an entire election in order to continue to support Israel. And so when I bring on candidates, one of the main concerns that my audience has is, well, why should I believe that anyone working within the Democratic Party has a shot in hell at affecting any change, no matter how good their hearts are or what their intentions are? And I heard you have this exchange with Jose Vega during the debate that you had a couple of weeks ago. And you were each asked the question, are you a Democrat? Do I identify as a Democrat? And Jose Vega said, well, maybe I identify as a Democrat, an FDR-style Democrat, but not the party that exists today because we live in a corporate duopoly. And you took a different approach, saying, well, we're running within the party and we have to, I want to make this party better. I don't want to put words in your mouth, so feel free to say it how you want to say it. But what do you say to folks that say, like, it's obviously true that the Democratic Party is going to fight you and be your enemy as much as the Republican Party, and that the interests that you're up against aren't really partisan in nature, but top down as opposed to left right?
Well, I fundamentally disagree if anyone says that the Democratic Party is going to be your enemy like the Republican Party. That Republican Party is out here protecting a pedophile and Jeffrey Epstein in that list, and a rapist and Donald Trump, and supporting a war that is killing our people, right?
So, Michael, there are quite a few Democrats in the Epstein files as part of the issue, right? A senior Obama advisor.
But I think there's a big difference between like individuals versus a party apparatus, to your question, right? Like, so to the degree, there's a tremendous difference between the two. Now, I want to be very clear.
Biden didn't release the Epstein files.
Well, I want to be real clear to the point. Your question was, are they similar enemies? And I just don't agree that they're similar enemies. I don't agree with that at all, because that would be like me saying, okay, because I don't get everything that I wanted and what just happened with Zohran Mamdani's election, which was transformative, that somehow the Democratic Party is equal to the Republican Party in New York. Absolutely not. I don't agree with that at all. Are there things we got to make better? 1,000%. And when people talk about promises that are achieved and how they achieve quickly, Mayor Mamdani talked about how do we get free buses? We're not going to have free buses happening this year. Does that mean he's not a transformative leader? Absolutely not, because they talked about tax the rich and universal child care and are pursuing that as well. And so I think there's got to be that dynamic here. Now, to the point that you raised about the other candidate who was talking about Democratic Party and otherwise, one of the reasons I mentioned that is that he didn't even run as a Democrat 2 years ago, right? He ran under the LaRouche Party in the general election. So to like try to come at somebody about party affiliations, he didn't even believe the Democratic Party was good as a general candidate 2 years ago when he lost that election. But now he is doing it in this way. Why? Because it gives him more attention. I mean, that's just the reality of that. If he believed in that, well, I just want to finish that out, because you have other incredible people. You have Andre Easton. Andre Easton's not running a Democratic lane. His great brother, great educated, doing his thing, right? So you have people who could decide they want to run a working families party. There's ways that people can take those other steps. So I just want to make it clear that at the end of the day, why is it that I'm pursuing it this way and in this lane? Because I do believe you can make massive changes when you are consistent in your values. When I came into the assembly, I was in the assembly 6 years. And one of the things we always talked about is, what is something big and transformative you can make happen every year? Raise the age so that 16 and 17-year-olds don't get tried as adults any longer. We made that happen, even though we had to hold up the budget to make that happen. My brother's keeper, there is no state in the country that still has that right now for Black and brown boys to go to school and graduate from school. The prompt pay bill and what's going on for Black and brown businesses. These are the things that people said you can't make happen, and we did. And so I'm tying them all together and saying there is no perfect party. There is no perfect institution. There is no perfect singular body. But do I absolutely believe that we are in a moment in time right now that you have one party that is actually trying to address affordability, actually help us as a people, actually change the game for the positive, despite the flaws that exist? 100%. Do I believe there is a Republican Party that is not doing that? 100%. But it also then means when people ask, why do you run against someone in a primary? Because when you have someone like Republican Ritchie Torres, who is doing the steps and taking the steps that he is, who has made it very clear that he has taken more proactive votes to deport people and to support the Israeli government than to actually have bills to create jobs, that's Republican behavior that we got to get out the primary. And so, like, I can acknowledge it all. We can acknowledge that we got to get better as an institution, no doubt. But also we got a question about the individuals. And I want people to lastly be clear. I want you to have the reasons to vote for me, not just that he's bad. I want you to be like, okay, Michael Blake is talking about Medicare for all. Michael Blake is talking about repealing the Lake and Riley Act so we can protect our immigrants. Michael Blake is saying that we have to have a local median income and actually expand income limits so we have a true affordable housing. Michael Blake is saying we need to have a my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper for education. I want you to talk about those things. And at the same time, Michael Blake is saying that there's a genocide. We should put money into books, not bombs. Michael Blake is a reverend who can talk about multiple issues at the same time. Ritchie Torres is not. And that is where I want us to be tied into the broader conversation, what's happening in this race. So
in the debate, you referred to, Ritchie Torres, and you said, he's the Republican Ritchie. You call him Republican Ritchie because he's behaving in Republican ways. And I think the trouble with that for folks of my sort of political orientation is that he is in fact a Democrat, and he's behaving in Democrat ways that are very much in line with what Democratic leadership prefers, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a viral clip of Chuck Schumer, I think from 5 or 6 years ago from an AIPAC conference that's going around again because it is such a unabashed commitment to designing American foreign policy around religious values of the Torah.
Yeah.
Did you see this clip?
The view of Palestinians is simple. Well, the Europeans treated the Jews badly, culminating in the Holocaust, and they gave them our land as compensation. Of course, we say it's our land. The Torah says it, but they don't believe in the Torah. So that's the reason there is not peace. They invent other reasons, but they do not believe in a Jewish state, and that is why we in America must stand strong with Israel through thick and thin. We must, because that is the reason, not any of these other false shibboleths, why there is not peace in the Middle East. Too many people don't understand that here in America.
Yeah, and it's wrong, and it speaks in a heinous manner against Palestinians, which is absolutely unacceptable.
Right, but that, of course, as you're well aware, is the most senior Democratic leadership in Chuck Schumer. Yeah. And so when one characterizes the bad things in the Democratic Party as Republican, when in fact they are very core to the Democratic Party, I think there's a disconnect with why one has confidence that working within the party that's run by Chuck Schumer and a party in which someone like Ritchie Torres has been allowed to thrive all of these years is one in which someone who has very different personal commitments can make a difference. And to the earlier point about someone like Jose Vega or even Bernie Sanders, right, who does not identify as a Democrat, who's been an independent, who caucuses with Democrats, but who has made it clear that he too feels like the Democratic Party and its values have moved away from him. These people have chosen to run within the Democratic Party because of the way our two-party system is set up. It is very difficult to, as you say, get attention. God bless Andre Easton, who has also been on this show. But it's very difficult to get attention when you're operating outside of the Democratic Party. You're not allowed on the debate stage. You don't have these opportunities to engage with the Democratic candidates like yourself.
Totally. So I think there's a difference in the decision of leadership versus do I believe that the Democratic Party is rocking the way Ritchie Torres is? No, I do not. And the data suggests that. Ritchie Torres is doing what is politically convenient because we are in a overwhelmingly Democratic district here in the South Bronx. And so he can't win as a Republican here, right? But if I were to tell someone on the rip, you have an individual who voted to support ICE, voted to deport people, has consistently sided with the Israeli government, refuses to call it a genocide, self-described himself as a Zionist, has no legislation that he's the prime sponsor that has actually led to creating of jobs. If I were to tell someone any of those things, they would think that is a Republican, especially given the moment that we're in. Ritchie Torres is doing what is politically convenient because of the district. Now, to the point, though, which is intertwined here, right? There's a dynamic that is real in which people want to know, what are you doing to help me and equally help change the game for the better as a collective? And whether that be, as you mentioned, Senator Sanders, who is actively going out and talking about and supporting Democratic candidates around the country while being an independent and caucusing with Dems, whether it be Zohran Mamdani, who has shown people that DSA, first that we got to remind people, he was not the first socialist mayor. David Dinkins actually was here in New York City. Sometimes people forget that actual truth right there, right? Of the framing of the positivity and the power, what happens when you build coalitions together. And so in this moment, do I recognize 100% that the policies that I'm actually laying out in terms of how do you actually help someone raise wages and reduce costs? How do you actually end a senseless war while also lowering our bills? How do you protect our immigrants and reject AIPAC? That is the position, not just of Democrats. Overwhelmingly is the position of most of the country. We're seeing this in more and more polls right now, that it is not just the one side, that not just one party that is believing in this. And so at the core, I want people to walk away and hear from this great podcast and the conversations that are happening. You have a choice. You have someone in Michael Blake who is saying consistently, we can help not only with affordability, we can also help reject AIPAC, and we can actually help us as a people. You have someone, Ritchie Torres, who's not going to do a damn thing about any of those things. And lastly, it is not just about AIPAC and what's happening with that. It's also the totality of the actions that Ritchie has taken. Ritchie has taken money from the CEO of Pinnacle, which has consistently had horrific landlord tenant atrocities, quite frankly, and hurting communities here in the Bronx. Ritchie Torres has taken money from the CEO of Palantir, which is clearly leading the effort in what is going on in this rogue Gestapo regime for ICE. Ritchie Torres has been collaborating with people like Brock Pierce. Like, this is an individual who has done these things, who are Republican supportive allies, but he's only doing that hoping you won't pay attention. And so the moment that exists here is creating these spaces and letting people know, you know what, you do have a choice. To your previous point, which is real, Ritchie didn't have a primary election these last two times. So this is actually the first time where Ritchie has to run in a primary against a real challenger. Last year, 13,922 people who live in New York 15 ranked me on their ballot for mayor. I actually have a base of people who have rocked with me in this current district who are ready. And it goes to the point I said earlier. I actually have more organizational endorsements, including progressive endorsements, than Ritchie does. So I do think people are willing to say, you know what? There's no person that's 100% perfect. But I actually think that this guy, Michael Blake, not only is better than Ritchie Torres, he is better. And that's what I want people to be able to walk away having that feeling and vibe from these conversations where we got for the next 2+ months.
Yeah, I mean, that is the question. I mean, I want to make sure this is on the table. You were endorsed by Track AIPAC, which is an invaluable resource that I think a lot of lefties really appreciate, who's been calling out electeds with infographics that show how much money they've taken from AIPAC. You do have these other organizational and union endorsements that you've been alluding to in the past. But the progressive groups like Until Freedom, New York Progressive Action, Progressive Victory. Like, it's a coalition. The Alliance of South Asian Labor. It's a coalition that is for real, of people who like Michael Blake, believe in Michael Blake, and are tired of Ritchie Torres. Right. And I hope I haven't sort of skipped past this too briefly, but I'll make it very explicit. Everyone listening to this loathes Ritchie Torres. I don't think the what you have to persuade anybody of in this audience is that you're better than Ritchie Torres. I mean, they'd probably vote for, the local dog catcher if we still had those. If that person were on the ballot. If there was someone named not Ritchie Torres, they would get the votes of this audience. But I also do think the other part of this audience is that they also are people who are interested in Jose Vega or Andre Easton, people who are very skeptical of the Democratic Party, people who might be willing to vote for someone running within the Democratic Party because they understand the structural limitations to running outside of the Democratic Party, and who see the value and importance of unseating Ritchie Torres, not just to send a message, but to do real good with their votes in Congress, right? But then if that is the main motivating factor, if your ability to understand what you're up against working within a democratic infrastructure and do real good in that context is why you're willing to vote for someone who's running as a Democrat, then I think they want to have assurance that you are very clear-eyed about who the Democratic Party is and what you're up against. Not because, 100%. It's not that Ritchie Torres gets to run as a Democrat because it's impossible for a Republican to win in the Bronx. It's not just Ritchie Torres. It was Andrew Cuomo and the IDC creating a Republican majority in the state legislature back in, again, this is like the 2018-ish era.
Yep. Which we helped take down. I was someone that actively campaigned against the IDC, right? And I think to your question, look at last year. I give you a very concrete proof point, as you alluded to. I ran for mayor last year. Brad Lander and I were the only two people who cross-endorsed with Zohran Mamdani. A bunch of people had the chance to. It was about making the decision and being very clear that for us to do what's better for us as a people, you got to shake this shit up and have someone who's actually going to go after it and let go of your own personal vision and ambition so that Zoran can win. A lot of people didn't do that. A lot of people wanted the traditional. They wanted the conventional. They wanted the easy.
And they wanted the corrupt.
They wanted the corrupt. And I just think, like, to your question, and it's a fair question, it's a real question, right? Like, at the end of the day, people are so sick and tired and appalled by what's going on in politics. They're asking these questions, which is real, right? Is how can we tell us why we should trust you? Give us some reasons why I should trust you. Now, all I can do is lay out the reasons and you hope someone believes. And I'm giving you a real concrete one, right? We did this effort to make sure that Zoran won, not just the primary, but Cuomo, in his egotistical nature, then ran against him in the general.
Right.
And then we had to keep rocking the help with that, right? Here and now, you look at the mold of what we have created in the last 10, 12 years, right? AOC, Bowman, Cori Bush, Rashida, you have people who have said, you know what? I'm going to get in there and we're going to make some powerful things happen for us as people. And I'm going to still hold people accountable. And I'm not going to say I agree with them all the time, but it does give us the ability to change the game in a real way. So to your question, tying this real together, you got three options here in this Democratic primary. If you want to make sure that there's a chance for Ritchie Torres to be gone, you only have two. It's me and Jose Vega. There's no one else in the race. There are three of us that are going to be on the ballot on June 23rd. And we have to be able to have that real conversation of, if our goal is to have better, to make sure Ritchie is gone, and then have someone that you can hold accountable, that you have a relationship with, you only got two other options here. And it's not just giving you the better of what's remaining, it's giving you better. And I appreciate what you just said earlier. It's not just I'm trying to be better than Ritchie. I'm a better candidate than Ritchie. I'm going to be more aligned with y'all than Ritchie. Look at what we've done in the past that is more aligned in the movement, right? And look at who we surrounded myself with over the years. It wasn't convenient to do the things that we did, but they were the right things to do. When we rocked with Until Freedom, right? When we said we're going to go after raise the age, when we said we're going to do My Brother's Keeper, these are things folks are like, y'all don't leave that shit alone. We're not doing that. I said no. And so that's what you hear from me. And I always go back. I'm a Cressida and Burnside kid. Like, this is home for me. This is my home district. This is a space where I grew up in. PS79, 118, DeWitt Clinton. I want people to know that for every person listening and watching, you sick and tired of Ritchie Torres, you want to actually do something that's powerful and real, you want to give ourselves a chance to really change the game, I'm asking that you support me, Michael Blake. Go to our website, michaelblakeforcongress.com. Show people that we are for real and that we can make this thing happen.
My mother and stepfather, until recently, and about 3 years ago, lived in Mount Vernon in Jamal Bowman's old district. So when I hear you talking about, Fordham Road and, that part of town, it's very nostalgic. I didn't grow up there. My mother got remarried when I was in college, but lived there after, between law school and college, and have fond memories of the area. But also it is a community in need. And so I do wonder what it's like on the ground. I have seen Jose Vega do some of these man on the street style interviews, juxtaposing what the very real economic needs of the people on the ground there are as contrasted to Ritchie Torres's priorities. But I wonder what your sense of, yeah, truly. But I wonder what your sense of things are as someone, as you just said, who is really from this neighborhood and this community. As you walk around and get a chance to talk to people on the campaign trail, how are they responding to your campaign? And do you have any sense of polling, how well your campaign is being received and what your odds sort of are? Yeah.
I think this is a perfect way to close it out. So you gave me all those things right there one time right there. So look, there's we feel really damn good, but we have more to do, right? Like, I'm running against someone who's going to be fully backed by AIPAC and fully backed by institutions in that regard. They're not just going to let things be easy for me, and especially every day when you have someone in Ritchie Torres who is truly avoiding us. As you saw, he didn't even show up at the forum. He was invited to the forum, didn't show up. He got asked by a reporter, Michael Blake, he says he just does goofy shit like that because he does not show an actual respect here. So when we think about what's happening on the ground, people are saying, talk to me about affordability. And that's why I say, how do you have a local median income, increase income limits, actually end credit scores for housing? What are you doing around what's going on for protecting us as immigrants? Again, repeal the Lake and Riley Act, have an immigrant bill of rights, actually have safe havens. People are asking very directly about gas prices. And I was like, look, you have a war we have no business being in. We got to get out the war, and we have to actually address energy insecurity in a very real way. People are like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But then there's also this broader dynamic that is becoming more and more palpable of we are tired of people not actually hearing us in the South and West Bronx. And for so long, we have had this designation as the poorest, which when you put in perspective, we have Yankee Stadium, Fordham Road, Fordham University, which Fordham College Dems have endorsed us, Bronx Community College, Lincoln, Holzer. You got all these different dynamics, Botanical Garden, Bronx Zoo. Why have we been the poorest for so long? Because we have so many seasonal jobs and temporary jobs, so the wages have not been high. And you have a lot of transition that's happening with that. So I'm also saying, how do we then bring in consistent jobs with higher wages for the jobs and the training for today and for tomorrow, because we deserve to have that as well. And so people want to have hope and they want to have a plan. And we're trying to give them both. And the reason why we have so much support that has been happening is that people are hearing us, right?
And is there any sense of early polling or, how many votes do you actually need to turn out? And, because I remember the conversation on AOC was it's a relatively low turnout vote. Yeah. Joe Crowley was sort of asleep at the wheel. Some districts are bigger, more sprawling, or it's harder to knock as many doors in as tight a time. I mean, what are the dynamics and what could be helpful to you as people look to see if they want to volunteer or support in any way?
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure you can appreciate. I'm not going to put out there what the win number has to be itself, but to the degree of what we need here, we need people who are listening and watching to volunteer. Go to michaelblakeforcongress.com/support. Sign up to knock on doors and or remotely help us with phone calls. Itself, you have a district where about half of the Bronx lives in this district. About 750,000 people, give or take, on live in the district. If it's a normal voting day, you might have 50,000 people show up, right? Like it's going to be that, unfortunately, it could be that appalling. And we don't have a gubernatorial primary and we don't have an AG primary. You're pretty much going to be showing up because of the congressional race or comptroller, right? And so for everybody, the best ways to help, we need votes. So everybody who live in the Bronx, tell them to go vote for Michael Blake. We need people that will volunteer, knock on doors, make phone calls, and we need people to donate. And to your point, we're actually getting ready to go do something local on the ground right now as we get ready for some more support that's happening right here.
And you mentioned we don't have a gubernatorial primary. We had Anthony Delgado on the show prior to him dropping out. This raises some of these questions about Democratic leadership and how aligned they are with your agenda, with Zohran Mamdani's agenda. Kathy Hochul famously had to be sort of dragged to the table with respect to Zohran Mamdani. We talked about Chuck Schumer a little bit, but Hakeem Jeffries would be leader of you in the House if you are successful. And he is another one of the major Israel supporters in the United States Congress, who famously referred to Israel as New York's sixth borough, I believe. That being the case,
well, it's probably really Puerto Rico, but DR. But I feel you. Yeah. I would call it Jamaica because I'm Jamaica, but I know his words. I know what you mean. I got
his words, not mine. But there was a bit of confusion on the left when Zohran Mamdani said that he didn't think that Hakeem Jeffries should face a primary. And of course, there's been some, again, confusion around the strategy of sort of embracing Hochul, even as she's been fighting funding and taxing the rich for a number of Zohran's own proposals. So I wonder what your planned relationship is with Democratic leadership, and more specifically, if you agree with Zohran Mamdani's statement that he doesn't support a challenger to Hakeem Jeffries.
I think the mayor was thinking about how to get his agenda through, right? And now, as we've seen from tax the rich in the state and for other efforts that are happening locally, he was making tactical decisions that's for him to decide upon for what he decided.
Well, the question is, if it is a tactical decision to give up leverage, that's the question. It's a little opaque from those of us on the outside.
I think that's the piece from the outside. I don't think he believed he gave up leverage, right? Like Zohran said he wanted to tax the rich. People thought that was ridiculous. And what just happened? Governor Hochul agreed to now tax the rich. So clearly the mayor has seen different dynamics.
The tax on unoccupied residents.
Yeah, people
Right.
with that second
And that
home
is
itself.
a significant win that I don't want to diminish in the least, but that is not the
Yeah.
same thing as his broader tax policy agenda and fully funding all of his agenda. To your point, you mentioned earlier that we're not going to get free buses because we don't have sufficient.
Well, respectfully, he never said that his vision would fully fund his agenda itself. He said that it could fund the agenda and bring in funds for that. But I think the bigger piece, though, is I'm hearing and receiving. He made decisions that he thought were best for New York, and people elected Zoran to make that happen for 4 years and then beyond, right?
So what do you think then? Because you're in a different position. He's mayor. You would be in Congress with Hakeem Jeffries ostensibly as your leader because he didn't face a challenge from Chia Ose or anybody else.
My job is to my job is to win first, right? My job is to win first, get there, and represent our people, and then when we do that, hopefully with a Dem House, we can make things happen in a very real way to change the game.
Do you think it's possible to have that kind of positive influence in a Dem House? I mean, reflecting right now
Absolutely.
on, for example, there's this, I don't know if you've been following this scuttlebutt that Shrikat Chakrabarti, who used to be AOC's chief of staff, is now running in Pelosi's seat in San Francisco. AOC has been asked repeatedly whether or not she would endorse Shrikat and has said she's staying out of the race.
Thank you, Congresswoman. After our last interview, there was a bit of a response regarding Shoykot, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to clear up anything. If they, some people said that you guys might have personal beef, anything like that, or what was the nature of your working relationship?
I'm just not commenting on the race. Yeah.
And nothing on those grounds regarding the personal stuff?
I'm just not commenting on it at all.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I've had Shoykot on this show and asked him about why he left AOC's office in the first place, and though he was a little vague about it, he did point to feeling pressure, that AOC felt direct pressure from Nancy Pelosi, who of course was Speaker of the House at the time, around AOC's demonstration on the Green New Deal on the first day in office, and was basically sort of being brought in line by the leader of the Democratic caucus, right? So this is a really important question, I think, for folks who want to know if you can actually have impact. There is a strong likelihood that the leader of the House is going to be oppositional to your ideology, especially given what we know about Hakeem Jeffries and his support of Israel.
I made this happen in the assembly, right? I've demonstrated to the track record. And as we talked about before, I do have to head out to a family commitment right now. But to the point here, look at what I did in 6 years in the assembly, where people were talking about what objectively could be hard to achieve with an IDC, with the Cuomo and others that may not have believed. We made Raise the Age happen. We made My Brother's Keeper happen. We did those different things. I would bring that same energy here in Congress. I do believe at the end of the day, you find ways to make things happen when you are a true leader. We're seeing that with AOC. We're seeing that with Senator Sanders. We're seeing that across the board, that it doesn't matter about the headwinds that are coming your way, that when you are a leader, you change the narrative. And one of the things on why I'm running is you have someone in Ritchie Torres who has made a decision that he is being known for helping a foreign nation and an Israeli government more than he's being known for helping people on the ground. I am running because you can be a leader in Congress and change the game in a very real way. If you are sick and tired of people like Ritchie Torres who are not going to be doing those things, if you are sick and tired of people supporting just AIPAC and the Israeli government and what's going on with Zionism, and actually help us in a thoughtful and a real way, my name is Michael Blake, and I look forward to being your member of Congress in New York 15.
I don't mean to hold you unnecessarily long. I thought we established, we normally go for about an hour, and we've got 9 minutes or so left in the hour. I would love to ask you some follow-ups if you're able to stay, because the question is, it's not about individual blame. Like it's a tough road to hoe, right? It's not the idea that we're expecting you to reinvent the wheel, but when you say something like AOC has demonstrated how you're able to make change, I think the enduring image for many of us on the left of AOC is that she was someone who we sent there hoping she would make change. And she was someone who seemed to really understand what an uphill battle it was going to be, right? She said, I'd rather be a one-term congresswoman than to, let go of my values. I'm paraphrasing, right? To abandon my values. But what it seemed to happen was the documented pressure from Nancy Pelosi, not just the event I just alluded to, but her crying over the Iron Dome vote after being spoken to by Pelosi on the House floor very early in her tenure. She's really been beat up, right, by Democratic leadership. We have a Democratic Party with the DNC leadership and Ken Martin who refuses to release a diagnostic of what went wrong in 2024. Many believe it's because it points to Gaza and Israel as the obvious reason why so many 2020 Biden voters decided to stay home, right? The IMEU poll suggests that the number one reason 2020 voters didn't vote for the Democrat in 2024 was Gaza. And so I do think this question of how one contends with very pro-Zionist Democratic leadership and Chuck Schumer and Jeffries is the question that any prospective Congress member, Democratic Congress member, left-aligned Congress member is going to have to answer. And that's why these questions of, well, if these people are still in power and aren't challenged in any way, if we have a progressive Democratic caucus that is unwilling to do what, say, the Freedom Caucus did and oust Kevin McCarthy, if you aren't willing to leverage challengers against these people or to hold their speakership hostage and do the kinds of things that extract real leverage, then what is the plan to get someone like Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer to stop their unyielding support for Netanyahu in Israel?
So again, I think that to your question about what is the plan, there's multiple ways to find success in making things happen itself. And so that is everything from how do you withhold funding? How do you take strategic and intentional votes? How do you actually move forward on holding people accountable? Like, what do you actually think through on substantive changes that have to occur? Because none of us know what would be all the possible steps until you actually get there, right? You can lay out the different ideas. No, yes,
have you talked to, other...
It would be the truth. I'm trying to answer your question. It would be true for any job, right? And I do think sometimes we treat it that politics is not the case. For any job someone is in, you will not know all the things that are happening until you get in it. That's just the reality. Like, that's not just politics, right? Like, there's no way someone would know, like, I can know all the things I would be as an exceptional doctor just because I went through medical school. No, you know, but that from different experiences.
I do have a sense of what the job entails, right?
You have a sense you're saying you would have a sense of everything a job would entail before you would get in it. All I'm saying
everything, but that's a maximalist framing that kind of undermines the point.
But that's my point, though. Like, I'm saying to your question, like, none of us would know every single thing that we can do without being in there. Well, not every single thing,
but for example, have you spoken to other electeds about the challenges?
Yeah, but I've given 4 examples to your question of things that we can do. You asked me here, what are things we can do to actually hold people accountable given the leadership? You take legislative votes, you hold up on funding, you could be accountable on leadership decisions. Like, those are the things.
Fair enough. So let me ask you about the legislative vote point, because the Stop the Bombs bill vote just happened and famously lost by, one vote or 3, whatever it was. And so there's one camp of people that says, well, look, the Democratic Party is moving so much on this issue. Fantastic, keep lobbying, this is progress. And there's another group of people that says this is what the rotating villain theory is, that Democrats frequently will vote on something, and you can get a lot of people even to vote on something when they know, in fact, it's going to fail because it gives them cover and makes it seem like they're on the right side of an issue that is increasingly polarizing. Obviously, we're still talking about Israel and Gaza and the Iran war. So, there are people who say, okay, legislative votes are fine, and they're important to get people on the record, and you can use that as a cudgel against them later if they change their mind. But also, I'm not super confident that you can get much done legislatively because ultimately these bills never pass. What do you say to those folks?
The job is legislative. I just think that sometimes I understand people are pissed with the system. Like, I get that, right? But I do think we have to ask ourselves, you are electing people as legislators where their primary job is legislation. That is literally their primary job, right? Like, they are not the ones to be media personalities. They are not the ones to be executives. An executive would be a governor or a mayor or a president. So I think at the core of it, if we're saying, well, they're not doing the job and legislation doesn't matter and legislators don't matter, I don't understand how that correlates for that role. Like, at the end of the day,
it's not that they don't matter. It's not that they don't matter, but it's that enough of them are corrupted that they don't take votes that are reflective of what their constituents actually want, which is why we have a country where so many policies are popular.
But then you vote them out.
Right.
I mean, but I'm saying that is the dynamic.
But that was my question. Why don't we support a challenge to Hakeem Jeffries then?
But there's a separation to your question. Your question was initially asking around Zoran and his decision of saying that someone should not challenge the
Well, I asked if you would agree with it. So put Zoran to the side. That happens to be what his position was. And I'm asking, it's more important. I don't
live in a district. Well, I guess for me, like, to the question of like, anyone could still run, right? Like, same thing, like for me in the Bronx, the leadership didn't want me to run against an incumbent, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, we still have to make the choice. Are you going to run because you actually think that's the best thing to do?
Well, Zoran isn't in this story because he actively, reportedly talked Chiose out of running. Like, he did not support a challenger, and therefore the challenger stepped down because of how influential Zoran is and how much his support is needed. And I bring up the Speaker of the House issue with Kevin McCarthy because there was a similar plan to oust Nancy Pelosi where 5 or 6 progressives in 2021 could have done the exact same thing and held Pelosi's speakership hostage in exchange for concessions, and they declined to do so. So there is the skepticism that elected progressives are willing to use power even when they do have it to try to extract leverage from the leadership of the party, even when the leadership of the party is so explicitly genocidal as Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are.
So then what's the scenario? So to the question, at the end of the day, Mayor Mamdani made a decision of what he believed was best for New York City. Right, like at the core of it, like that is the decision that he made. Like, he didn't just do it.
I hope that's the motivation, right? I don't know what's in his head.
But I'm saying, like, but again, none of us know what's in someone's head. So like, I have to believe that a decision that someone makes who just won a transformational election made that decision because they thought that this was best for New York City, because he made that very clear declaration there.
Sure, right? But I'm asking what you believe. Like, you would be in a different position. Again, I bring up the Zoran stuff as background.
My belief is that anyone who wants to run anywhere should run. Right? I wouldn't tell someone not to run. I have run against the system many times. So at the end of the day, like, I ran in a scenario where people tried to sue to kick me off a ballot when I got elected to the assembly. I ran for DNC vice chair where people were like, that's ridiculous, someone from the Bronx do that. We won both of those races. I am running against an incumbent who is AIPAC supported and funded and protected. At the end of the day, I am never going to tell someone stand down and don't run, right? Like, go live your dream.
Okay, so that's a difference. That's a difference between you and Zoran Mamdani then. Because that is in fact what Zoran did, whether you think it's the right decision to make or not.
That's for him. That's for him to make that choice, right? Like, but again, I think at the core of it is like, people still got to make a decision to run, regardless of what he says or not, right? Look at the other districts. You have other districts where the mayor is supporting a candidate and there are other people that are supporting other people. At the end of the day, you just got to go get it. If you believe you best for that community, go get it.
And
that's why we're running. That's why I'm running, right? That's why I'm running here. Like, take
a step back. Yeah, I'm going to let you go because now we are at 4. But I just want to take a step back and say, I think the question is, most of us don't have an opportunity to pick our boss, right, or influence who our boss is. When you're in Congress and you can endorse people who are running against your boss, when you can vote for who the boss is, right, vote who gets to be speaker, that's a different dynamic. And understanding how much leverage and influence those people have, how much, frankly, New York Democratic leadership screwed up New York State with the redistricting and arguably cost the Democrats the House. I mean, there's been colossal failures that have really been centered in these New York Democratic Party leaders, right? And so it feels at a certain point, if you're running to be under those people's umbrella and control, I mean, it's probably a better way for me to word that, but that to not have an opinion, to not want to support a challenger to those people, to not have an opinion about how you're going to work around their obvious opposition to you, does, I think, lead some voters to ask, why then should I volunteer and put all my work behind someone who might end up being like AOC? And I have to acknowledge, many people in my audience do see her as disappointing. They were hoping she would have a much more adversarial relationship to the Democratic Party because they believe that a more adversarial relationship is the only way you can get something done.
Well, again, but that framing of even how you just said that, the only way. So if someone comes into a conversation believing the only way you can be successful is X, then Yeah, that becomes a bit challenging there, right? But to your question, there's a whole bunch of reasons why someone can decide why they're rocking with the leadership. But what I am saying is,
Well,
it's
like what?
clear. Well, I
Why
mean, I
would
don't know.
why
I
why
mean,
would
like,
someone?
I mean, you have leadership that are from your same state, in which you could probably get more funds from your state when we get the majority back than if there's a leader from another state. I mean, like, I just
Okay,
think
so the calculation is I can get more money from my district by not
not for
challenging.
not for your district. To your question, for New York, very specifically to New York, what is a possible reason? Because I don't know the reason why the mayor made his decision, others do. If you're looking at someone who is likely going to be the speaker from your state in a majority, yeah, that probably is going to lead to more ability for New York to actually get support for the city. All I'm saying is none of us know exactly those decisions, but that is a reason that can be helpful here.
Right.
But to the
And I
but to
think
the
it's
but
yeah.
to but to the
Yeah.
core of it at the end, like, there's a bunch that you can make happen even when you disagree with a leader. And if people want to ask, like, okay, how? Look at my track record. I've repeatedly been in scenarios where we pursued things that were difficult, hard, not something that someone wanted to do, and you still made it happen.
Okay, I would want to be respectful of your time. The last thing that I realized that I didn't ask you about was that clip. I feel like I have to address it, and I want to give you an opportunity to address it. I think you've done a really fulsome job of talking about some of your past record with AIPAC, but I have to play this clip, and I don't want to play it without you being here and having an opportunity to put it in whatever context you think is appropriate. So can we just play that clip that goes around periodically and virally of you talking about AIPAC? At AIPAC.
Each of us took our first trips to Israel with AIPAC's Education Foundation. We found inspiration in a country that mirrored our American values. Professionally, the trip was eye-opening for me. I visited Israel just as I was preparing to run for the state assembly in New York, and the opportunity to meet and connect with political leaders in Israel was invaluable. But personally, the trip was transformative. In Israel, I stood by the Sea of Galilee, read aloud the Sermon on the Mount. As a Methodist minister, nothing compares to the reading of those words in the very place where Jesus had spoken them. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. From entrepreneurship to political organizing to deepening my faith as a Christian, AIPAC and AIEF changed my life forever. Traveling to Israel made me a better legislator, a better activist. It helped me to understand that as a leader within my community and the Democratic Party, I have a responsibility to support America's friend and ally, Israel. And much like Ashley, I recently stepped up into a new role. This past February, I was elected a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. Regardless of party affiliation, I believe we must unite to heal and strengthen our ties, because the world needs us to be unified for positive progression, not political rhetoric any longer.
All right. A couple of things there that people focus on is the idea that this AIPAC trip changed your life, the idea that we have shared values with Israel. Obviously, this is an older clip. What year was this from? Do you remember?
I believe that's from 2017.
Okay, so long before the Gaza genocide, but not long before, obviously, the occupation and apartheid of a state of conditions in the region. What do you say to folks who are sort of rattled by that, and what would you say differently now than you did then?
Well, what did I say right after? I said it changed my life because of the faith perspective. That literally was the sentence right after that a lot of people don't actually listen to. I talked about how I led the Sermon on the Mount as a minister. I talked about the Sea of Galilee. I talked about my faith perspective both times when people actually listened to the full clip. That was what was transformative. I didn't say that just because of the things that AIPAC was talking to us about was transformative. I said that me as a minister, at that point I was a minister, I wasn't even ordained yet. And so the dynamic of being able to give arguably Jesus' most critical sermon there, that happened on that trip. Now, to the degree of where we're at and the policy positions of what has happened, what people don't talk about is the second we walked off that stage, when they then showed a clip of President Obama and Bibi Netanyahu speaking remotely, they booed Obama, and it was very clear that we were used as Black people in that moment. I have talked about that. I have talked about how in that meeting when apartheid came up, they shut the meeting down. I have talked about how people have absolutely gone after us for calling it a genocide. And so to the dynamic of like, what would you do differently? If it's here and now, of course, hindsight always 2020. Would you go on a trip knowing what you know about AIPAC now? Of course not. I wouldn't. But I didn't know that then. And I just think that there is a scenario where I would hope that people would recognize that when you learn, you do better. That is what I've done. I can't change going on a trip from the past. But what I have said very clearly is what was transformative to me was as a person of faith who was able to baptize people in the Jordan River, who was able to lead the Sermon on the Mount, was able to see things that I had never seen before, which I saw for that first time. That part is what changed me. It was not because of the affiliation of an organization that I have very directly have said I reject. The easy thing for me would be just to say, you know what, just keep rocking with AIPAC because you have a clip like that and people will say, you know what, that's who you were.
Certainly.
As opposed
And I do think
doing what's right.
Yeah. And emphasizing again your endorsement from Track AIPAC, et cetera. It's funny that this very similar conversation, well, not very similar, let me not put you in the same bucket, but there's an interesting parallel conversation happening with Tucker Carlson. I don't know if you've seen these clips where he basically is doing a mea culpa about having contributed to Donald Trump's 2024 election victory and is now obviously having regrets around Israel and the Iran war.
You and I and everyone else who supported him, you wrote speeches for him, I campaigned for him. I mean, we're implicated in this for sure.
Yes.
It's not enough to say, well, I changed my mind, or like, oh, this is bad, I'm out. It's like in very small ways, but in real ways, you and me and millions of people like us are the reason this is happening right now.
Yes.
So I do think it's like a moment to wrestle with our own consciences. We'll be tormented by it for a long time. I will be. And I want to say I'm sorry for misleading people, and it was not intentional. That's all I'll say. But anyway, but the question does present itself immediately, like, what is this? Was this always the plan? You don't want to be a conspiracy nut, but like clearly there were signs of low character. We knew that.
Yes.
But it didn't, there are tons of people of low character who like outperform their character. It doesn't have to be.
Sort of the norm, actually, these days, I would say.
I've outperformed my character a lot. I don't have especially high character, right? But, you try to, whatever, you try your best. But what was this? Was this always the plan?
Looking back after the last year and a half, it seems like it kind of was. And it's easy. Well, you could get really deep about it and say, what was Butler? Like, how was it that and Ryan Ruth, I mean, he was subject to 2 legitimate assassination attempts. Have we ever gotten to the bottom? I know you've talked a lot about this, but have we ever gotten to the bottom of that?
I haven't talked a lot about it. I don't know the answer, but I know that those investigations have been stymied. Fact.
Yeah, stymied from the very top, from people who actually would have the power to get to the bottom of it.
And the motive.
Yes,
right? Yeah,
very much. So the enormous amount of money he got from Miriam Adelson now seems suspect to a lot of people at the time. But, there's a lot of money in politics. To run for president requires an enormous, I mean, Kathleen Camel-Toe went through $2 billion in 4 months. So, sure, there's an argument to be made that you get money from those who will give it to you. It's just the nature of that game. But it's still reprehensible, and it's still a big question mark. Why would someone who has obvious and demonstrated allegiance to a foreign power give Donald Trump $250 million while he's running for president? I mean, how is that defensible? It's really not. If Russia had given a PAC for Trump, if the mayor of Moscow had somehow assembled an enormous amount of money and put it in a 501c3 for Trump's benefit, would that have been acceptable? Of course it wouldn't have been. So what does it's so basic, comes back to the money. Like, what did they get in return for that amount of investment? And it's clear.
I get it. No, I mean, of course, I agree with every word that you're saying. I just think given his behavior and his demonstrated disloyalty and viciousness to previous supporters.
Yes.
why wouldn't he display the same lack of loyalty to Miriam Adelson? I mean, that's kind of the question. The only people he's been loyal to are the neocons and his donors.
And people are having this conversation about, what it takes to be forgiven, whether this is a genuine mea culpa, how some people have criticized Donald Trump but aren't willing to own up to their responsibility for having gotten him elected, and that sets Tucker apart in some ways. I don't know how online you are, if you've been following any of that.
Yeah, I just think look, it's. I guess we would all love to be right 100% of the time and be pure 100% of the time and be clear 100% of the time and not make mistakes. Every single one of us makes a mistake. Every single one of us has learned something new, and you do something different. That's just the reality, right? And I just think that if we're going to make progress as a people, in this moment, if someone is coming to you and saying, I have learned, I have understood in a way I didn't before, and I'm making a change for the better, that's the kind of person you would want to be with, not even just in politics, just in your life. If you got people around you who are unable to say, I haven't learned and do something different, then that's probably not someone you're trying to rock with. Because I don't know any person in life, I'm not sure if that was a disagreement or not from the response. I don't know any person in your life that you agree with 100% of the time and has not made a change when they've learned something.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I don't know if you saw Ilhan Omar said, I think on the Adam Friedland podcast, that, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and stuff who are sort of doing an about face on this, that we should sort of call them in and, take the win, as it were, on their willingness now to criticize Trump and to hopefully bring people away from the MAGA movement.
What's your reaction to seeing comments like that from Marjorie Taylor Greene, someone who's not always been, I think, as collegial to you as she should have been? And how do you think Democrats should respond? Like, do you work with these kind of disaffected MAGA voices? Do we build a bigger tent to try to win in November? How are you thinking about it?
Well, I mean, just to answer the latter part of your question, I think as Americans, it is really important for us to work together for the preservation of everything that is good in our country, and to support leaders that we can trust to safeguard what is good about our country. And I believe the thing that has been very fascinating, especially about Marjorie and Candace, is that they are not just coming out like the other ones that you'd mentioned, where they're saying this action is wrong, right? They're saying, I am done with you.
Yeah, it's like a values-based, like
right.
This guy is bad, not like this policy is bad.
Right, and I think that we should give them credit for that, the fact that they've had this wake-up call to finally seeing this con man, this corrupt, chaotic man for what he is. The fact that they understand that he never really had any principles outside of uplifting his ego. They finally understand that his run for the presidency has never really been about America or keeping with the traditions of what it means to be a president of the United States and moving this country forward. It was always about, how do I enrich myself? It was always about a grievance politics, or he was upset that Obama was mocking him. It was all about these other things. It was never about putting America first. It was never about having coherent policies. This is a man who said, I have a concept of a healthcare plan, over and over
like
again.
10 years ago.
Right. That he's got like a binder full of, he's never been somebody who says something and you can take it to the bank. Yeah. He's never been somebody who has an ideology that could be understood. He calls himself a religious person, but cannot quote a single verse in the Bible. So the fact that they have gotten off the sycophant train and are saying, we trusted the wrong person. We are sorry for that, and we need all of you to wake up to the fact that you've also trusted the wrong person, I think is an important thing for us to put our arms around and say, yes, then now let's figure out how do we save our country from the disaster that this man is creating.
But she got a lot of backlash from saying that.
What
do you think?
Which is just wild to me. Like she got backlash for saying that someone has learned better, is now saying let's do better. And that's I'm just like,
Well,
like,
yeah.
like I'm just saying like again, baseline, right? Like you learn more. Like we all go to school, right? There's things you learn, you get better at that, you then become a better person. That is the rhythm of life, right? And so in the moment that we're in, there are tens of thousands of people, if not more, who are now seeing what is happening of a genocide, seeing the very clear alignment in terms of money and funding, seeing very clear alignment in terms of policies, who are like, yo, I'm good. I'm out. I'm not doing that any longer. Who are losing friendships, relationships, financial opportunities, donations, jobs, otherwise, because they're willing to say, I have learned. And I would hope that is the space that we can be in, where you can say that that's the case. And if someone is like, yo, I don't know if I believe them, then that's fair. That's on them. They don't want to believe that person.
Yeah.
They want to believe that. That's on them, right? But we're human beings, and you get a choice. You get a choice to support someone in Michael Blake who is saying, this is what I'm trying to make happen. This is what I am doing. This is what I'm doing around affordability. This is what I'm doing against AIPAC. Or you have a choice and continue to let someone in Ritchie who is obviously not saying anything about either of those two.
Yeah, and the one other part of that clip, you noted that you were DNC vice chair. I mentioned this earlier. I alluded to this earlier. This controversy around not releasing the DNC autopsy report from 2024. What do you make of that?
They should have released it.
Why do you think they haven't?
Again, I don't know. I mean, I'm not there any longer. I was only there for 4 years, but I would think that if someone does not release a report, regardless of who it is, there's things in there that they think are harmful, right? Like, to me, I treat it no different than if I was interacting with a police department and a DA that didn't release something that happened in terms of an investigation, or something that happens internally with a corporation, right? Like, clearly there's something in it that someone believes would be harmful than good. That is their decision, right? Itself. We also can use good logic to know that us not embracing what happened around talking about Gaza and Palestine cost us votes in the country. Real talk, I don't need an autopsy to tell me that. Right.
Like, I mean,
I don't need an autopsy to tell me that. So like,
that's what makes it so weird, right? Like, I feel like there's more bad press around not releasing the thing than just releasing the thing and it's saying the obvious truth that Israel cost them the election.
I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why people don't release information, right? Like, I mean, from a federal government standpoint to a local government standpoint, there's plenty of reports that every single one of us are around where someone doesn't release something for the reasons maybe they may think it'd be more harm than good. I don't know that. But what I do know is, where are we at today for the rest of this year and beyond? I am on the side of saying that what is happening is reprehensible in the Middle East, that we need to be out this war, that a genocide is occurring, that you have to be able to say that you can stand with Palestinians, that you can be very clear that you can do those things. That does not make you anti-Semitic and anti a collective people by being critical of a government. I don't need a report to tell me that. My humanity tells me that. And so at the end of the day, one of the many reasons why we have the support that we do, why we're in spaces like this, why we're doing the work that we are, is that I want people around the country to say, if you are tired of someone in Ritchie Torres who is not going to be with you, and you want to have someone who actually will listen to you, rock with you, even if I don't agree with you 100% of the time, I'm actually going to be helpful to you and support your causes probably 99% more than Ritchie Torres ever will. And
I don't doubt that.
Right. And so I'm just like, yo, like, let's go get this win. Let's go put in this work. Help us with these phone calls. Help us with knocking on doors. Help us with donations. You know, give us the ability to keep growing to bring this win home.
Would you go on Hassan Piker's show, Michael?
I would. I mean, I think you can't ignore the impact of what Hassan is doing. I mean, like I saw him at Zorn's victory party. We were able to rap there. You know, I mean, we can't be afraid to go in spaces, right? And you're going to be around a lot of people. It's always fascinating to me if, like, people are like, oh my God, how can you ever go into that kind of space? but then they'll go and get interviewed by someone who's saying the complete opposite, and they'd be good with that. So, there is a reckoning that is happening in the country where, regardless of what I feel about Fox News, and I got a lot of things about Fox News hasn't had me on since I called them out for years ago on why did Tucker Carlson still have a job, and they were coming after people right there, right? Bill Hemmer and them never forgave me for that, but I just called them on what was real. But when you have entities that have more viewers, more listeners, more people following, and then your response is, you know what, I'm not going to go there. Well, that's the reason why you're going to lose.
It's interesting then, right? How it seems like so many, kind of establishment Democrats seem to be hyper-focusing on Hassan Piker and really coming after folks like Abdul al-Sayed for being willing to sit down with him, right?
Some polling's now showing, brother, is now leading in the polls. So
yeah, absolutely. But I won't belabor the point. I mean, that is why, obviously, that I'm bringing up, like, if the establishment's going to make an enemy of Hassan Piker, if the establishment's going to not release an autopsy report, if the establishment is who they are, it's not that it's coming from a place of wanting you to succeed, wanting Abdul al-Sayed to be successful, empowering Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Summer Lee to be able to get the most out of all of the work and exposure and onslaught and slings and arrows they have to suffer for being in the positions they're in and being so hypervisual and being a minority within their own caucus.
But we don't need an autopsy for that. Like, at the end of the day, just rock with your candidate, make sure they win.
No, we don't need an autopsy for that. But if the autopsy is not because they sort of like wrongly believe it'll hurt more people to let it out than to keep it in, but is in fact because they know that they will be pressed on changing and having accountability and not repeating the same things in 2028. And they have no intention of acting any differently in 2028. And therefore, they don't want to be held to account by their own autopsy report. Then that becomes an argument for why the Democratic Party as an institution is broken in a way that needs either substantial reform or abandonment altogether.
Well, it doesn't need abandonment.
That's why.
Yeah, it doesn't need abandonment. But I go back to when I got elected to the DNC. I mean, no, it doesn't need abandonment. I don't want people to be walking away and just saying like we out this shit. We're just not going to do it. I just think make it better, right? And
you're not a. How do you feel about third parties?
Third parties are fine. Third parties are great. Third parties are welcome. People should run with what they feel is their connection, right? That's the beauty of the country you live in. I'm not going to tell some, if you believe that a third party is where your alignment is, then go get that. Go get it. But then also understand that in the space that we are in this country, if you vote third party in a general election, more than likely, given the current scenario, you're probably not voting for the Republicans, right? Like for giving you, right? And given the current dynamics that we're in. And so I respect it. I got love for it. I welcome it. It pushes us, it makes us more willing to be in these spaces. And full stop. But I want us to be able to be aligned on why do we run? I want people to walk away from this understanding why to vote for, support, donate Michael Blake, not just Ritchie Torres ain't shit. I want you to be like, okay, Michael Blake talking about how do we actually help you have better jobs, raise wages, actually help us with better schooling. What are we doing on Medicare for all? What are we doing on student loan forgiveness? How are we protecting our women and standing up for our women, especially our Black women who have been under assault for too long, while simultaneously being able to talk about the mental health crisis that's happening among Black men? How do we have the conversations of protecting our immigrants, not deporting our immigrants? I want you to be like, you know what? He's saying something that rocks with me and for me, and that's why I'm going to go help him. And if you want to actually have people that give you more of why you believe in them, not less, my name is Michael Blake. Go to michaelblakeforcongress.com and help us go bring this thing home.
Thank you so much, Michael. You've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate you staying a little longer and answering those last few questions.
I appreciate you.
All right. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. You can get an extra episode of Bad Faith Podcast every Monday at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. We'll put links to where you can support Michael Blank in the show notes. As always, take care of yourselves and remember to keep the faith. Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. That's patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.